Welcome, everybody. It's the journalist Sin-seer, and I am here today with producer, singer, songwriter, director, amongst other things, Crystal Johnson. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me.
No doubt. For those who may not know, can you take us back to where you were born and raised?
Well, I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but I have no recollection of that because I was raised in Brooklyn. I've been in New York all of my life. I just so happen to have a family foundation from the Midwest. So I'm the only one of my siblings who was born outside of New York. My brother, who's 3 years older than me, was born in Harlem, and my sister was born in Brooklyn. But I'm kind of like Dorothy, the special child that comes from Kansas City and whirled my way to Brooklyn. But I have no recollection of the Midwest like that. So my only memories is of Brooklyn, and then I lived in Rockaway for about 7 years of my life, like in high school, junior high school era. So
Okay. Can you take us back to your teenage years? What were some of your hobbies? What were you into during your teenage years?
teenage years, I was into boys. But realistically and honestly, I was definitely always into the arts. By my teenage years, I had already delved into the world of theater. So I was kind of focused in junior high school. I learned how to play guitar, learned how to read and stuff. And by high school, I learned how to read piano and stuff. But I come from a family of music, so it was always around me. And they used to laugh at me in the house. Like I'd be playing my little country songs, and my father and my brother, who's a bassist, my father plays the organ, they would be laughing. I wanted them like to share it with me, but they never did. So I kind of put it down, and I regret that to an extent because I enjoyed out of piano and guitar. I really enjoyed the guitar.
Nice. Now, at the age of 7, you recorded with Pink Floyd. Is that correct?
I don't have much recollection of it, but yeah, I mean, I was in a renowned children's choir, my family church, and we used to do a lot of recordings and stuff. So to my recollection, yeah, we did some stuff off the wall or whatever, but I'm not sure of the details of it because I was so young. I just remember being so excited to be in the studio with the mics hanging down and all of that, but I don't have a lot of details. So yeah.
At what point did acting come along?
11-ish, 12-ish. I did a workshop production of Mama I Want to Sing up in Harlem. Um, and I guess that kind of changed my life. It kind of put things in focus and in motion for me. Like from that point on, I knew that I would be in the arts. I only went to school like one day a week on Mondays to pick up my assignments and stuff. So I thought I was a little star, a little celebrity. They would have my posters in my school and stuff. So that was kind of like surreal for me. But I had already been accustomed to like singing and stuff because of my church and my parents and everything like that. All of my family basically are professional musicians, singers, things like that. So it just gave me an opportunity to have center stage and learn. I absorbed a lot from a lot of great legends like what's his name? Oh man. Richard T was the music director of the play. I don't know if you know about the history of Richard T. He's a musical legend. I didn't really even know who he was, you know what I mean? Chapman Roberts, who's like Black Broadway legend. He was the musical supervisor and composer, and Anne Ducanay played my mom. She went on to win a Tony. So I was a little girl around. Vanessa Bell Calloway was in the workshop production as well, who is known for being in Coming to America. So, I was a little girl absorbing a lot and learning and learning about the stage and how to entertain people.
Right. You made your way to Broadway in 1988?
No, actually 1988,
Yes,
I
what's that,
think.
88?
Oh yeah, 88. Yeah. I had been in a play called Gospel at Colonus which is a story about Oedipus, but told in the way as if it were a book in the Bible, if that makes sense. But it's a great production, and my family basically was in the play because, again, my church, we were very musical, very renowned in the East Coast area, Institutional Church of God in Christ. Um, and because of the church, we were able to do some professional things, a lot of professional things. They did Carnegie Hall, and um, they're up there. They're known as hit makers from like the 60s and the 70s and 80s era. So that afforded me the opportunity to be on Broadway.
Nice. What kind of opportunities led from your being on Broadway after you appeared in that play?
Ah, man, if you know the Broadway world, it's like that's something you kind of stay in and kind of build on. But I was like 19 years old, I believe, when I did that. And I was like, I don't want to do plays no more. I want to sing. I want to do some hip hop or some R&B or whatever. I used to do demos for everybody. I mean, whether it was for free or a little quick 75, $100, I was trying to build my demo basically in my catalog and just get myself out there. So as soon as I finished that, I was like really focused on music. Maybe about a year later, I ended up in Los Angeles, where my mom, a lot of my family has relocated to. So I spent a year out there, and I did a lot of work with my cousins, Andre and Brian Wilson, who's the son of Ronnie Wilson of the Gap Band. It's my family. And they were signed to, oh, were they signed to Dick Griffey? I can't remember exactly who they were signed to, but the group was called Four Deep. And they would have me come in and sing in all of the, female background parts and stuff like that. So LA was a really fun time for me. It just exposed me even more to the music industry and what the game was about. It was a
Right,
preparation for me actually for what would be to come.
right. You talked a little bit about demos. What labels did you shop to?
I never really shopped. Man, I had like I've turned down a few deals, in my teenage years, just because I felt like, oh, I don't think they're offering me enough money. And it's funny because there are certain artists, and I won't name them, but when I hear their songs, I'm like, oh yeah, I let you get that deal because when I didn't sign, they wound up signing you, and they had, success and stuff. That's happened a few times. But I was young, and I knew I was young. I guess I had an advantage because I did have some experience in the game, so I didn't just take the first thing that came my way. But I didn't really like shop necessarily. I would just be doing demos and stuff, and people would hear me and you know walk me to the right people, I guess you should say.
Right. One of those right people, Quincy Jones, maybe?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can you talk about the kind of discussions you and Quincy had?
Sure. Well, actually, I have to start by saying I met Quincy through Mike Strafford, who was I think, VP of A&R. I'm not exactly sure of titles, but he was the man there. He had just transitioned from radio at KJLH. So, Quincy's the man. I actually met Mike Strafford through Commissioner Gorton, who has done production and engineering and stuff for everybody from Lauren to KRS-One or whatever. He's the one who actually introduced me to Michael Stratford, who had just gotten his position at Quest Records, and they loved my work. I had gotten my publishing deal. I had a publishing deal on Sony before I signed to a major recording label. So I had some attention, on me at that point. And next thing you know, Quincy wanted to sign me. At that time, there was a pretty big bidding war going on. But let me go back. So after 90, I came back to New York. I'm a New York girl at heart, so I was missing, like, I can remember even going to the clubs because that was hip hop heaven right then. That time, and being a girl from Brooklyn, growing up in New York, experiencing jams in the park and all of that, like it was missing in LA in 1990 for me. So I wanted to come back home. I'm used to theater. Just the whole music scene was different to me. So I came back to New York. My cousins, the same cousins, Andre and Brian, were working at that time with Ernesto Velasquez, who is a Latino artist that was signed to Uptown Records. They called me in. Crystal, we need you to do your magic. We need you to do some vocal production and work with him and work with us, and let's do this. So they were staying, I was living in Queens at the time. They were staying in a hotel in Manhattan. They basically moved me into the hotel and got me work, which led me to the whole Uptown family. They were working with Tara Jeter. Her name is Tara Tillman now, but Tara Jeter at the time, who's from the Girls originally, and she was an A&R what do you call it? A&R rep at Uptown, and she really took a liking to my, singing and me as an artist, and told Andre about me. And I had that meeting with Andre. So before I met Quincy, there was already like a little tug of war going on with different labels that were interested in me. Once Quincy came into the equation, like literally every major label was like calling me, and I'm like 21 or something like that. I'm like, oh my God. Um, so uh yeah, I don't know where I'm at, but yeah, so but you were asking me about Quincy. So yeah, so basically, one thing about my experience with Quincy Jones is the fact that he believed in me, not only as a singer, but as a songwriter, as a budding producer. I'd be producing my little tracks, and Sony had a studio for the artists that were writers and stuff, and I'd be in there working and stuff. And you know, for him to say, "Oh yeah, I like that song," I'm like, so it was really humbling for me. I grew up watching my mother be a fan of, Quincy Jones with the dub, with the album. When you open it up, it was a full picture. My mother had that on the wall like a teenager when I was a kid.
Wow.
So I knew who Quincy Jones was, since a kid. I knew who the dude was. When they flew me out to LA, and I was invited to his home, and I'm looking, and I think I was more excited about the dude. It's a statue about this big, and I was more excited about that in a way than Quincy. I'm like, oh wow, dude. But he believed in me. Him and Michael Stratford. Unfortunately, the industry got in the way of things because I was really intent on signing with Quest initially. And when I was out there, they gave me carte blanche. But also, Gerald Busby had flown me out at the same time. So Gerald Busby, imagine this, Gerald Busby and Quincy Jones was like, okay, well, I'll pay for her flight going out. You could play, because I was taking meetings. So Gerald Busby was really interested as well. Like I said, once Quincy got involved, everybody was kind of knocking on my door. But when I got back home, I had made up my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sign with Quest. At the time, Quest was distributed by Warner Brothers. So not only did I meet like the entire staff of Quest Records, but I also met the staff of Warner and Reprise, because he had some kind of deal where some of the Quest projects would be released on Warner, and then some of it would be released on Reprise. So I was supposed to be like one of their, top tier artists. They wanted me to meet everyone. Someone very, very, very high up at Warner Brothers at the time that I had met through Quest and Quincy and Mike Stratford. Someone very renowned in the business, contacted me when I got home and tried to like basically cutthroat Quincy to get me to sign to Warner proper. And I'm like, oh man. I was first of all too young. I didn't have management, mind you.
Hmm.
I never really had management in my whole career. I've tried a few people and I've never really had management. So I didn't have anyone to intercept these phone calls. I'm getting phone calls from people that I met through Quincy Jones, not just any A&R, through Quincy Jones, the Quincy Jones, King Quincy Jones. And my mindset was like, wow, if this person would have the audacity to try to snake Quincy, then if I don't sign with him and I sign to Quincy, perhaps he may interfere with my project on Quest because they're the vehicle for distribution.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, I stopped taking Quest Records phone calls. Uh, and Mike, they knew that I, was intent because at that time it was between Quest Records, Uptown Records, and Epic Records by way of Paris Davis. Paris Davis was an A&R, and he's actually the first one to offer me a demo deal. And that's when I was working with Nesto and everything. But once Tara Jeter introduced me to Andre, it kind of pushed him out of the way because they were offering me a deal versus a demo deal. But at the same time, because there was a lot of attention towards me, Paris had enough power to push that up. So I definitely had love for Paris just as a person, and I believed in him as an A&R as I did Tara as well. But they tried to basically move Tara out of the way, the male dominance of the game, but
Right.
she's the one who really brought me to Andre. I'm going to say that. You know what I mean? They didn't, by the time I signed to Uptown, she was not involved. But again, like I said, it's the male dominance in the 90s.
Right.
um, but yeah, so back to the Quest thing. I'm like, oh my God, why am I in this? I don't know what to do. I had started getting calls from Sony then. Uh, uh, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I wasn't even answering my phone for real. Um, but I liked Mike, and I ended up telling him what happened. And I'm like, I don't want to be of like major executives issues. I'm just a singer. A lot of people don't realize sometimes as the artist, you get caught up in things that you don't even know about because there's this bureaucracy and this business and competition going on. And I'm like, hey, I just want to sing my songs. I don't want to be put in this predicament. So once I told Mike Stratford what happened, he relayed the information to Quincy Jones. Somewhere in my storage, I still have. Remember when the voice, what do you call it, answer machines with the
Yeah.
little min. Quincy Jones called my house about 5 times and kept leaving message. Crystal, darling, it's Quincy. Pick up the phone. And I'm like, oh my God, this is too much for me to do. And I don't know how to, like, I don't want to be in the middle of mess, but I do know what's going on and I'm not comfortable. I ended up, of course, I had to take his call. Uh, I guess A&R person at Sony at the time was a good friend of mine named Suzette Williams. And she was like, you have to you have to call him back, Crystal. You can't just keep, letting them call you on voicemail. And I mean, not voicemail, but in your answering machine. But I was so scared and so uncomfortable to be in such a predicament. But I did speak to him, and he said everything short of basically like, you know, I got you. I'm Quincy Jones. But I was afraid of the shrewdness of the business.
Hmm.
So I went with what I was familiar with, which was Uptown, because I had been working with them, in that time. I had, worked with Hev and Father MC and Ernesto and so many different artists up there. So I was like, and then of course, Andre had just gotten the $50 million. So he's like, I'm popping right now, or whatever the word was back then. I'm that man right now. You need to come home and la 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 la. So, and at the time they were working on Who's the Man, which I had been, working on one of the songs. So he's like, yo, let's just do this. They never knew about what happened internally, with the Quest thing, but that's why I went to Uptown.